Well, good evening and welcome to the Rewind Show, the Sunday supplement, 221 of the Rewind Show. I'm Steve Brown in my usual spot, and over there in his house, Sunday evening, manager of Bacup Borough, Brent Peters. How are you doing, mate?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I've been out today. Usually we have the Sunday morning, but I've been to another comic convention with my daughter over in Leeds. So she likes to go to these conventions. I've been to London, I've been to Liverpool, I've been all over it, sure. But you'd be surprised how many people are at these conventions. Thousands into the Marvel comics and Star Wars, and they all dress up and anime cartoons and all that kind of stuff. Right. Not my full of geeks, Brent.
I'm not going to comment then. Well, let me tell you, at 5:20, right, I was still at the club. At 5:20, I arrived home, right, feeling like dusty bin because what I've been doing, and I were on the phone to one of my staff for tomorrow, a driver. So I've just had to run round the shower and now come live on air. But it is what it is.
Dusty bin, that is a blast from the past, isn't it? 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, full of the blast from the past. Yeah, well, it's been an hectic day today. I mean, I'll just give a special mention to Keith Howarth of Valley Sound and Light. He's worked tremendously hard the last couple of days. He's put all the lighting, wiring in for the in-house lighting and the disco lighting, and he's put the and for the speakers and everything like that. And he's worked tremendously hard the last 2 days. Not that he doesn't work hard any other time, but it's been, on Friday, I think it were, or Thursday or Friday, it were like chaos in there. Every one of them were in, every plumber, electrician, Keith from Valley Sound and Light were in, Alex McNulty were there, who's doing the rendering and the plastering, was in. So they're all in, but like he said, I work better when there's a bit more space and I can I'll work on my own. So he's worked hard today, so I'll give him a special mention. I'd also like to say a big thank you to my lovely daughter for a lovely card and present, and also my son for a lovely card and his present, being on Father's Day. And I'd like to just remember my father, who sadly on this day, 14 years ago, passed away. So, for anybody else out there who's, lost their father and they can't, celebrate with the family and the father, my thoughts go out with them.
Absolutely. I got a Father's Day card. It had the price on it still, 99p. That's how much I'm worth. 99 pence.
Listen, mate, it's the thought that counts.
It is the thought that counts. But while we're on the subject of giving people a mention before we get stuck into the football, our lovely head of business development, the second on the left, Jane Pallister, she's been involved in the community again at the Rosendale Means Business, the networking group, doing a sterling job, Brent.
Yeah, she's teamed up with Deborah, and I mean, as you know, it's a bit difficult for Deborah at the minute with what Deborah's going through. And I've just got. We'll come on to Jane in a minute, but on Deborah's front is, it's reminiscent of the old song, Tracks of My Tears. When if you listen to the words of Smokey Robinson and Tracks of My Tears, where it goes, about the smile on my face, he done hide the tears behind it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If you listen to them words, it's poignant with Deborah, because you'll always see a friendly, smiling face and people she meets in the community and everything else. But behind it, she's going through a lot of trauma really at the minute, but she's standing up to it and standing up to it,
putting on a brave face, and
standing up to it extremely well. But moving on to Jane, Jane's done fantastically well, and it's never easy to do the job that. Listen, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll keep repeating it. If a football club don't get their business development side of things right, then you might as well forget it, because you're not going to have the tools to run your football club, because it's so important. And the one thing about Jane, she's not afraid of a challenge. And let me tell you, it is a challenge. It's a challenging position. And I'll be honest, and I mean this in the right way, it's a challenge having to face me every day when I'm putting her under pressure, because obviously I have to put her under pressure. We're on the peripheral of a football season, a new football season, and and also what people have got to understand and probably don't understand and don't realise, since the end of the season, when the season finished and we had to properly gut the sports bar. I mean, we're operating, even though we've got the new build, we were operating on like a quarter, if you will, of the old build, if you will.
Yeah.
So we were operating on that, and we could still manage to get people through the door. People could still buy a pint, and be in there. But there came a time when the season finished and the curtain came down, where that had to be all gutted out as well, because the new is going into the old, if you will, and there won't be an old, because everything will be brand new. So there's not going to be an old. But the simple fact of the matter is, which is really hard, we're not making no money. We're not selling. We've nothing to sell, because we've no bar, so we're not functioning. So we ain't got anything. We've got nothing at the minute. We've got nothing. So it's mega important that these tradesmen really, instead of being on the A roads doing blinking 30 mile an hour, they need to be on the motorway doing 70 mile an hour.
Yeah, but as you said, it's extra pressure on the shoulders of Jane, because, as you said, because we're not selling a beer and the bar's not open for hospitality or events. The focus is on Jane for commercial partnerships.
Yeah, she's got to do this, and she's got to get things over the line. And to be fair,
there's no one better.
She's doing that. And I once remember saying to her about networking events, and I hope people don't. Well, Jane's already taken me to task on this, and I said they don't work. They don't work, these networking events. You're wasting your time. You're just wasting your time going to them. Yeah, what you're doing is you're meeting people, which is brilliant, fantastic. You're bringing the name of Bacup Borough Football Club into the community, which is absolutely fantastic. But usually at these network events, there's not usually the decision makers there in attendance. It's usually somebody else representing the companies, and they are the decision makers, and it's the decision makers you need to speak to. Well, I'm afraid when she went to the Rosendale one, what you've just highlighted there, when we came on air, I think she got 4 over the line from that event. So she's basically shoved 2 fingers in my face.
Egg on all over your face, Brent.
Exactly. So on that, a big thank you to them who's come on board, and a big thank you, and a big thank you to Jane for getting it over and making me eat my words.
Yeah, got to say good afternoon, or good evening, I should say, to Peter, tuned in from France, one of our regulars. Great show. Keep up the good work, guys, and let's look forward to a cracking season.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I hope you enjoy your few days or however long you're in France.
Excellent. Talking points, Brent. It's an interesting one, because last week we spoke about you able to get the signature of Ollie Hodgson, and not just a signature, get the lad on a contract. Because I know how you work. You was at least 7 or 8 players on contracts at the club. And the primary focus of that is to protect the assets of Bacup, because these players to you are assets. But we've had a couple of knockers.
Well, let me tell you about the knockers. I've seen one, and listen. As much as I respect him, and as much as he's a good guy when you speak to him and everything. But I'm going to be, he's a good guy, and he'd probably do anything for you. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to football at the level we're at, and when it comes to football at the higher level, and when it comes to contract players, and when it comes to administration and everything to do with running a football club, and you know me, I don't mince my words. He's clueless because he's never been there. He's never done it. He's never been on the inside. He's always been on the outside, and there's too many people like that on the outside looking in who don't have a clue. They just vent off their, what they think, and there's no substance behind what they're saying,
well,
and it's laughable.
I think it's important that you kind of break it down, because there'll be a lot of clubs who follow the same approach as we do, a Bacup, getting players on contracts and protecting the players from the vultures.
Well, it's not just about, sorry, Steve, to butt in, it's not about protecting the players. Listen, the first thing you do, right, when it's all about development. And I know what goes on in and around the Northwest Counties. Don't forget, the Northwest Counties is at the bottom rung of the football pyramid, right? Whether we like it or not, steps 5, step 6, bottom end. Yeah?
Yeah.
And what happens is, too many times, that you've got, if you've got a good potential, we'll use Ollie, but we'll not use Ollie because, well, we will, but Ollie hasn't come right through our youth ranks, right? He hasn't
actually gone through the full process.
But clubs invest in the youth structure. Now, they don't invest in a youth structure just to, most people out there a bit envy of being a part of a club like Bacup Borough and Darwin's, who have a good youth structure, and clubs like that, because there's a means to an end.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas now at 16, you take my grandson, for instance, Harley Jack Peters. The team he played for, he started off at Bacup Borough, but obviously he then progressed on to Rosendale FC Juniors, Rosendale United Juniors, not Rosendale FC Juniors, Rosendale United Juniors. And like a lot of clubs, they finished at 16. There's nowhere else to go because there's nobody runs, and under 18 leagues and teams are horrendous. People don't want them because, let's be honest, it's a bad age. In terms of, when I say a bad age, I'm talking in life skills in general. You've got young lads that are growing up, they're maturing, they suddenly start to feel a bit of romance in the air. So they start to take an interest in girls.
Yeah.
In modern day, and I'm not going to knock this because I'll get into trouble if I knock it, they also take an interest in lads. Yeah. So that's the way it is, and equally, on top of that, because they've gone through school, and school talk about the education is about human biology and everything else, other things happen. And before you know where you are, you've got a situation from that situation. You get a situation where they know that the way of life for the older people is to go in a bar, and they enjoy the social life of a bar. So they can't wait themselves to go in a bar.
There's so many other distractions.
Exactly. So the thing is, what happens is, eventually when this happens, when normally on a Sunday morning, they're all there with the parents and getting up and ready for a 10 o'clock kickoff, and they're up at like 8 o'clock, ready to travel and then go and have a 10 o'clock kickoff. When they get into like 16, 17, 18, they get to a situation, they can't get out of bed in the morning because they've probably been out on a corner somewhere drinking cider out of a can or whatever.
Yeah, it's the air of the dog. It's not football.
You know what I'm saying? So all these things go. So consequently, what happens is these lads, football tends to go on the back burner a little while until they get a bit more mature and they pick it up again and come back again because they miss it. So this age group is a bad age group, right? But equally, what happens as well, right? So a lot of teams, so when it's come to 16, like at Rosendale FC, Rosendale United, it stopped. So there's a lot of good players that's been coached and coached well from a young age right? That's progressed and progressed and progressed and progressed and progressed, and they get to 16 and they've nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So if you're not careful, you've got a good 16-year-old or a good 15-year-old, right? But all that hard work that's gone into coaching him from being 10-year-old or even younger
Totally wasted.
is wasted. Now, at Bacup Borough, and not just Bacup Borough, but we're talking about Bacup Borough, there is a pathway. Yeah. And that pathway brings them in. I know we call it the under-23s, but the under-23s is basically, but next season it won't be called the under-23s. We'll call it the Bacup Borough FC Shadow Squad. But that shadow squad could be anything from an age group from 16 to blinking, 26, 27, it could be anything right across the board. And the one thing that we do, and the one thing I'm encouraging is, take Harley Jack, for instance. He will be encouraged to come to our pre-season and train with us like everybody else. And I'm not saying he's going to be ready. He's nowhere near ready for the first team thing, but he needs to train with. He needs to be, and he needs to get used to being in a men's environment.
Yeah, he'll gain the experience.
He'll gain the experience and all that, and hopefully he will. Let's be honest. He ability-wise, pace-wise, his technical ability is very, very good. But there's certain things that he needs to improve on in a lot of ways, and that's why he needs to continue his development. Now, when they come in, so now we'll move on to. We've said that we'll now move on to Ollie Hodgson. So Ollie Hodgson comes to us, similar situation, hasn't come through us through our youth team, but a similar situation. So he's now at 18, right? So he's represented college at under 18s. He's done very well. He's got good education from his college in his coaching ability. He's got great support mechanism from his own life. So that's done him well. He's then come into Bacup Borough. Before he were at Bacup Borough, and this is not me trying to knock other clubs because I'm not here to do that, but I have to talk facts. He went into a club that's in the Northwest Counties League as a junior player, as a young youth player, and wasn't given a chance, which what happens at a lot of clubs, because managers, unfortunately, even though I disagree with it, this comes down to your chairmans and your board of directors. They've got this mentality about it being a result business, and we had this conversation last week. Yeah. There's more losers than winners. So when it becomes a result business, and we've seen it at Nelson last year, the manager that started the season with Nelson, who did Aaron
Ripley,
was sacked because in the terms of the people who was higher up and above him, they wasn't happy where things were going in their eyes. So they wanted somebody else in, so the manager gets sacked. So because managers are under pressure like that, they tend to shy away from giving youth a chance. Because if they do, and it doesn't work out because they're not experienced, results might flicker a bit and not be right. So then they're not happy with it because the results aren't right. So they sack the manager. So because they know they could potentially get sacked, managers go down the road of having a what would be kind of it's a safety net.
Experience and tried and tested.
Yeah. So the youth get missed out. Now then, on the other flip side of that, so when you've got a player that's come through your rank, that's come into your door, and you've seen his ability and you've seen what he's about, and he's got a great attitude, the one thing, this is the first thing that you don't want to happen, and I've seen it so many times and it does happen. We've got one now where I'm not going to mention any names, but we had a player that came last season that was shown the door by a club in the Evo stick from over the Ribble Valley. I'll not mention no names.
Yeah.
He eventually comes to us and starts doing well with us in part of his development. And all of a sudden, not the manager of the club at the Ribble Valley, but people from that club who's not the frontline manager. Oh, Why has he gone? He's suddenly doing all right at bit. Well, have the vision, I say at this point. Why have you let him go? Yeah. Because if you have the vision and you know what you're doing, you wouldn't let him go. You'd protect him because he's an asset and he's from over that way. But you haven't protected him. You've let him go. And what usually happens is if a player survives with Brent Peters and he's good enough for Brent Peters, without going scouting him, he must be good enough for us.
Correct.
So what tends to happen then is they go and get him and bring him back. But when they bring him back, right, he's still not ready. They throw him in first team and he's like a fish out of water because he's not ready.
Yeah. So
it ends up going backwards instead of forward.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons why we've done we Ollie Hodgson is like we've done is because we want to protect that situation from happening because we love the guy that much, right? We see his potential. We don't see him being at Bacup Borough. We don't see him being at Ramsbottom. We don't see him being at blinking, let's say, for instance, Radcliffe Borough. We see him a potential at 18, potentially could be knocking on the door of an Accrington Stanley. We don't know. We don't see. It's part of his development.
But you've seen enough. You've seen enough in his ability to say that in the next couple of years, it could be attainable.
Well, exactly. We don't know because we you see players sometimes, and this happens even in the Football League. Why do players get apprenticeships, right? When it were apprenticeships as such, but then after the 2 year, they don't get a first year pro because they feel that they haven't developed like they thought they would develop, so they get released.
Yeah. And even when they do get released, because they've been playing that exhibition football that we like to call it, they're not even ready at our level.
Well, I'm not going to mention any names of any players, but one club's the head of youth from a Conference National club has passed me two players that they think the head of youth thinks so highly of. And I could read out his resume and everything is, like he's lightning quick. He makes things happen. He knows how to press and, he's got quality of both feet and everything. And this is a 16, 17-year-old lad. Now, this has come from head of youth of a Conference National club. Now, this lad, he'll be going on holiday, but when he comes back off holiday, he's coming in with us. Now, again, in my opinion, if he carries on what he's been taught for the period of time he's been at, I nearly said the club then, it nearly come out, but I'm not going to say the club, but this Conference National club, right? If he continues, then he, and again, could be a prized asset. Because he's been good, well coached where he's come from. He's been recommended to me. He's going to come in under my coaches, and I think I've got excellent coaches, right? He will come into us. We will continue. I will watch his development, and if I think he's one that could potentially be, he will go on contract. Now, the simple fact of the matter is, so one of the reasons why we put a player on contract is because if we don't put a player on contract, because there's a load of blinking out there in the Northwest Counties League that see potential, that they see a player with blinding pace, or they see a player that can rattle a few balls in the net, they're not bothered about his continuation of his development. No. They're just think
they want the quick fix.
They want the quick fix. So what they'll do, they'll put 7 days on you, right? And he's then he's at liberty that he has to speak to him.
Yeah.
It's only courtesy, speak to him. So at the same time, another club might put 7 days in. So then he's got liberty to speak to them in 7 days, after 7 days. And then another club might come in, he's at liberty to speak to them. So before you know where you are, the lad doesn't know where he's coming or going. He can't concentrate on his football. He can't knuckle down because all of a sudden other clubs are putting 7 days in and want to speak to him with a view to taking him, right? So is that helping his development? No, it's not. Yeah. He needs to be protected so that stops.
Yeah.
It stops. So for 2 years, he can fully focus and concentrate on his football. So as much as them clubs put 7 days in, well, they won't now because he's on contract, that will stop that situation from happening.
Yeah,
right? It stops it.
Yeah.
And it allows him to continue his development without the extra burden of other clubs wanting to speak to him just to throw him in to play regular football, and when he fails and he's not doing it, tip him out again.
Drop like a brick.
Correct. So that's another one. That's another reason. So in the case of Ollie, that's why we've done that, because we're protecting him, because we want to continue his development by working with Nigel, Ryan, and Alan. So he will continue to flourish, hopefully. You know, there's a lot of things to happen with him to do that. So that's another thing. Now, coming back to the person that you said that, you know, put something up, and, you know, I've had a bit of a knock at him at the beginning of the show by saying he's not worked in youth development, he's not been at a football league club, he's not been at a non-league club in our level of football or higher. He doesn't understand all this. He's only speaking from the outside looking in, and he started to come out and rabbit something. One of the things he put in, and it weren't even worth answering to, but I think he got a few pelters off. One of our colleagues at Avro jumped on it, from what I can gather, right? But one of the things he said, it stops them from progressing to play at a higher level, which is absolutely the biggest load of frigging verbal trash I've heard in my life, right? So I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to give you current Manchester United under full-time working under 18 coach Colin Little, who went on to make an absolute fantastic football league career with Crew Alexander, scored plenty of goals for him, was a reject from Bury, which is when I picked him up, right? I worked with him at Bury. He played at Rosendale United, and he was on contract, by the way, at Rosendale United. When I left Rosendale United, he left, and only for a short time went to Hyde United on a contract, and Crew Alexander came and paid Hyde United 50,000. Go on YouTube him, go on Google him, do what you want, paid 50,000 for him, right? He played for me on contract, non-league football league reject, and a young lad. He was only like blinking 18, 19, 20 at the time.
But in no shape or form did it stop his growth, his progression.
Never stopped, nothing. So that what would come out were verbal, absolute somebody that just had nothing better to do but be a keyboard warrior, right? Second thing, right? I gave the very first contract that Carlo Nash ever had at 18-year-old. Carlo Nash was spotted playing for Simon Holding, was playing for a pub on Sunday called the Waterworks Tavern, which is now Mario's restaurant in Bacup.
Andy Pilling talks about this story.
And Simon Holding was playing in that team on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Simon Holding was my assistant manager at Rosendale United in 1993. Simon said to me, "You need to come and watch this lad, Brent." He said he's got all the attributes of being a top goalkeeper. He's got everything. And he says, I mean, back in the day, I think round about this time, I think Gary Bailey were at Man United, goalkeeper, and he had kind of I think he was similar stature, blonde hair, good-looking lad, everything, and a goalkeeper. So I went watching him, and I got him in, or we got him in. We got him into Rosendale United, 1993, 18-year-old. He wasn't even, so this is again the verbal trash that they were coming out with. He wasn't even my first choice keeper because I had Barry Siddall, who got 700 Football League games under his belt, playing for clubs like Carlisle United,
Man City, Blackpool,
all them, right?
And didn't have blonde hair.
And didn't have blonde hair. But yet, this kid was my number two to Big Barry, right? And was a very good goalkeeper. And my phone used to ring every week asking me, and it didn't matter whether we were first team or not, can you tell me where is Carlo Nash playing on Saturday?
Yeah. And
all they wanted to know were where Carlo Nash were playing, right? And it was one of the staff of Dave Bassett. I'm not sure which club he were at the time, but
could have been either Sheffield or Wimbledon at the time.
Right. So they kept ringing me up, asking me, Carlo Nash, where's he playing? They didn't bother. They didn't say, will he be a first team player? Will he not? Where is he playing? So I had to give them the information.
So by this time, news was already travelling around.
He was travelling around. Eventually, he left Rosendale, did Carlo. I gave him a contract, 18-year-old. He progressed to Clitheroe.
Yeah. He
played at Clitheroe. And then eventually, from Clitheroe, granted, Clitheroe did well in the FA Vars, got to the Vars final, played at Wembley. This isn't the discussion we're having. The discussion we're having, does it stop them progressing? No, it doesn't. No. Because Carlo, from 18-year-old, signing a contract for Brent Peters, and I've got the official Manchester City magazine when he went to sign for Manchester City, and he did an interview. And in this Manchester City magazine, he actually talks about his time with Brent Peters and signing his first contract.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that never stopped him from progressing, because eventually he was signed by Crystal Palace from Clitheroe, and from Crystal Palace, he moved to Man City.
Yeah.
And my final one, which comes to speak to mind, was a lad called Brett Ormrod. Right?
Yeah.
How many more does he want me to rhyme off? Brett Ormrod.
Anyone who knows football knows Brett Ormrod.
Correct. So Brett Ormrod was released by Blackburn Rovers. Not good enough. Brett Ormrod went playing whilst I was director of football at Accrington Stanley. He went playing for Accrington Stanley. And for all those watching who don't know, but Accrington Stanley then back in the day was a non-league club, not a football club, league club. Football, non-league football. They were non-league, right? Back in the day. There was in the Evo Stick Division 1 at the time, right? And he played for Accrington Stanley. He recovered. He actually got a broken leg while he were playing at Accrington, would you believe, in a pre-season friendly against Nelson. Right? He recovered from that broken leg, got his head down, worked his socks off, continued his development. The next thing, he got a great move to Southampton.
Yeah.
And from Southampton, he got another move
to Blackpool.
And that's where basically he absolutely
played in the Premier League.
And played in the Premier League. So the trash that somebody puts up on Twitter, right? I think I've just answered that in a nutshell.
You have. And if you want to cap it off with a cherry on, good old Fabio Brew.
There you go. That's another one. Tell them the story.
£2.2 million went back to Portugal. Then he was signed by a Saudi Arabian club for 2.2 million quid. And then he made a bigger move to a Chinese Premier League club where I believe he is now for mega money. So it all started at Bacup Borough.
And if you go on Wikipedia, it tells you his last non-league club was Bacup Borough.
Correct.
I think Mosley might have a little bit of a mention.
Yeah, they're on there.
But he played in the youth team at Mosley. His last club as a senior player was Bacup Borough. So I'm afraid these people that go around saying that it's not right, it's wrong, it's not. Listen, football is a business, I'm sorry, but it is. Whether it's the days of when Simon Holding were playing and all that back in the day, it was there were 10 teams.
Yeah,
Rosendale United, Whitworth Valley, Aslington Football Club, Bacup Borough, all from Rosendale theoretically, all competing together, town teams, right? There wasn't there was no pathway or anything in back in them days to get you into a football league club. Since the day that they introduced the pathway into a football league club, which is the same pathway that Salford City have gone, which is the same pathway as Fleetwood Town have gone, which is the same pathway as Accrington, Stanley and Morecambe have gone, to name a few, right? When that happened, and the money that you either had to decide whether you wanted to be a part of the National League system and the feeder clubs and the progression from the feeder clubs to come into that non-league system, or you just wanted to be and stay as a amateur status and just be in an amateur league, right? Now, if you decided to be in the National League system, that came at a massive cost and still does today, because the standards have got to be a lot higher. And I mean a lot higher by standards, I mean not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, right? The standards are a lot higher because the stakes are a lot higher, you know, all the way up. And if you're winning, you know, and you go up, right, you're going higher up the leagues, up the food chain. If you get to the Conference National, right, your next stop, protocol, is where Wrexham have come from and where Oldham Athletic have come from, is back into the Football League. So it's massive. So it's a business, and it's going to get even. So anybody out there with the mentality of a back in the day amateur setup,
they're going to get left behind.
They're going to get left behind because it can't be like that. You're stringent. I mean, we're in a situation at the minute. I've got panic on at the minute because, you know, we've got certain things off the pitch that we've got to adhere to, you know, as part to hold a game of football on Bacup, right? As in the National League system, right? Now, because of the investment that's being made into the new clubhouse and everything, and part of our grand grade, you know, incorporate part of that clubhouse, right? We need to get it finished, because if we don't get it finished, I mean, one simple thing is toilets. You know, you've got to have toilets on a football ground. You know, you can't, the days of Lincoln going and getting a bucket and going round the corner and sitting on it is gone.
Yeah.
You get there. So what I'm trying to say to these people who live in the dreamland, you know, it's a business and you've got to run it as a business. And if you don't run it as a business, you're going to catch a cold massively. And I talked about it on last week's show about they're going to bring licensing. It's already in the Evo stick and it's already in the Conference National. And if you remember, one club last year who just got promoted from the Northwest Counties League, from South Manchester.
They were being investigated.
Were being investigated and got banned from playing for a few weeks because they was not doing things like they should have been doing things. So every club is under strict, you know, scrutiny. Yeah. And all that strict scrutiny, you know, they'll come down on they'll all get caught at some time. The ones that are sailing against the wind will get caught because they will, and the whole blinking thing will collapse. So my point is, where we're talking about contract players, right? The main situation is, because it's a business, as you just touched on, a Fabio Abreu, you see a talent, you're developing, and what people have to understand, if Fabio Abreu, if what's happened to Fabio Abreu would have happened now at present day with the Northwest Counties League keeping records of everything, we would have been, the club Bacup Borough would have been in for a piece of that transfer fee.
Yeah, there's I don't know what the name is, but it's part
finder's fee. finder's fee.
Finder's fee. I think
And
they were
and
something like
training fee.
£10,000.
Correct. The reason the FA were backing us, we had his registration there. We had his, sorry, not his registration. We had his contract there. You can see it on all the things. But what we didn't have, and the Northwest counties, they keep them now, but they didn't do. We didn't have his actual physical. They wanted sight of his registration form.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't find it, so we lost. It's like you're winning. You know you've won the lottery.
Yeah.
But where the bloody hell's my lottery ticket?
You've got to prove it physically.
You've got to prove it, and we couldn't prove it. Even though it's up there, even though he'll tell you that were his last club, we couldn't prove it. So we lost out on a shed load of money, right? But that's why you protect your assets, because if Ollie Hodgson, let's say, goes on in 5 years' time, and in 5 years' time he'll be like 24, so he'll still be in good value, right? At 24, if he goes on and he gets a big move somewhere at 23, 24 year old, we get a percentage of that straight away by FIFA regulations, because we've actually physically coached him.
But if you have no contract in place, you end up with zero.
Yeah, nothing. So the people have got to understand the logic and the logistics of it all. And this now brings me, while we're still on the contract situation, this brings me to another situation about retain list. Again, we've got to deal with the FA. And when you're dealing with contract players, it's not non-contract, it's contract. So when you're dealing with contract players and you're dealing with the FA, right, you have to do what the FA say. And if you don't do what the FA say, you're leaving yourself vulnerable and losing players that you think you've got tied up but aren't tied up. And if you've got them tied up and it comes to the end of the season, there's certain criteria that clubs have to do and have to follow. And the criteria is there right in front of you, right? Tells you what to do. So let's take the retain list, right? You have to have, and you'll have seen it, these people who watch social media, I mean, we you know, especially the Football League clubs, they'll go out, they'll automatically, at some point, they'll go, and it has to happen before the 1st of June, they will put out their retain list, and it will go up. So you'll see everybody that they've retained, right? And then they might come out with a list of the players that they're not taking on board, they're not keeping. They'll come up, right? That's what happens, right? So we are no different. Bacup Borough is no different. We don't have to put it out on social media, and we haven't put it out on social media. But I've got to do and comply with the FA rules of a retain list. Now, on a retain list, there's certain things that can happen. There's players that are still in contract. So they're in contract because they signed a 2-year deal and it's at the end of the first year. So automatically, you have to put him back on your retain list because he's retained because he's still in contract. So also, when you're writing a contract out, you can put in the contract, and if the player agrees, you could put, say, signing a 1-year contract, you could put in it a year's option or a 2-year option if you wanted.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But you put an option in if you wanted to put an option in, right? So when it gets to the end of the season, it's the club that decides whether they're going to take the option up or not. But again, there is a criteria that you have to follow. If you don't follow it, you're leaving yourself wide open and in trouble. The next one is a player and it's offer of re-engagement. Now, what that means is an offer of re-engagement. It means that his contracts, he's not got an option. His contract's coming to an end, and you are, as a club, are deciding that you want to keep him. So you're making him aware that you're offering him an offer, making him an offer of re-engagement. Now, in that, the rules of the FA, you cannot pay that player less than he was getting previously. You can either keep on the same agreement or offer him more, right? So these are the scenarios that you have to do and you have to follow. And if you don't follow them, and it tells you what you have to do and how you do it, and it tells you you've got to send the players in question, because don't forget, this happens after the season's finished.
Yeah.
And it also tells you, right, that what you've got to do, you've got to put it in writing to the footballers, right, to the players. But you've got, if it's a player that you're going to keep by way of retaining him, right, or offering him a offer of re-engagement, you have to send that by recorded, registered post. So they've got to sign that they've received it, right? And you've got to have proof that you keep the postage, and you've got to have proof. You have to do that, because a player could turn around, I've not received anything, I've not got anything. But you've got proof, we've got proof, we've sent everything, right? You follow me? Simple, right? If you're not going to retain somebody and you're releasing them, you've got to inform, that's been on contract, you have to reform that player by post, not by post, you can do it by email, letter, email, or you do it by post. But it has to be in writing to the player that you're not retaining the player. And this will happen at every level, let me tell you, every level. So in a football league club, what will happen is you'll see it. If you read your social medias, right, and you read the things, it automatically, let's take Man United, right, for instance, it'll come out. Players won't know. They'll say, the press will start talking and they'll say, so-and-so's out. Let's say, for instance, let's say, what's he called? The centre half. They're not taking him on. He's been given a free. He's gone. The centre half. He's been there before. He's all right. In fact, I might just give him a ring and get him to Bacup. You know what I mean?
Okay.
No, not O'Shea. He's just played this season. He's a good one. He's come in. Evans.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah,
Evans.
Right. So let's take him, for instance. So his contract is coming to an end. So what happens? You don't have to go up to a player and say, he knows that his contract's coming to an end. Or he should do. He knows. His contract's coming to an end. So what would happen? Probably he or his agent would go to the management and say, I need to know as soon as, what are you going to do with Johnny Evans? Are you going to retain him, or are you going to release him? And at some point, that agent will be told by the manager, no, he's given a great service, thank you very much, but we won't be retaining him.
But then he knows his players available to be put in the shop window.
Correct. This is how it works. I'm only telling you how it works.
And that's how it works at every level.
Every level, right? Now then. So when it's come to our retain list, I've done what I've done. I've sent people out. I've done everything by the book. I've heard this on the grapevine, because I always find things out, and it just winds me to the top and I'm not going to mention no names, I'm not going to mention no players, but it's the old story. It's the old thing, is that even in life and in life in general, right, if somebody came to me in life, nothing to do with football, and said, do you know somebody got sacked today down at Armrods? I'd say, what did they? You go, yeah, for doing this or doing that. I would never repeat that, because I always say there are two sides to a story. And if you listen to one side and you don't get the full story, you're only telling half a tale. And
the chances are it could be watered down.
Correct. And people put 2 and 2 together and make 6.
Yeah.
So I always am a big believer is that there are always two sides to a story. Now, let me tell you. So I've gone by the book, and I've kind of, out of 3 contract players that I had to, out of all the contract players, but out of 3 players, I've had to make a decision on some were already in contract, so that it didn't matter. Some were out of contract, but we've taken up the option. Others were out of contract, full stop. So we've sent him an offer of re-engagement. Then I have got to look at it from a business perspective like any other manager, whether it be football league or whether it be non-league, right? And I've got to look at it when I've got young players coming through, right? I can't have everybody on a contract because if financially it's not, it can be, you know, it's not, it's for a club, for a football club, it's a commitment because straight away there's a tax there's a tax element and national insurance that we have to pay. That's as simple as. So the simple fact is I had to make a decision. Can I take everybody back on contract? No, I can't. Because there's another 2 players which will be announced very, very shortly that are also following Ollie Hodgson.
Yeah. And
I firmly believe at this moment in time where we're at, these players I'm talking about are the future of the club. So I had to make a very, very difficult decision. Something that I didn't like to do, but I had to do for the benefit and the future of the football club in terms, like every other manager has to do, even at the highest level. You know, Johnny Evans has given great service for Manchester United. Is it worth keeping him on for another season? You know, give him an extra contract, and they mustn't think there is because they have to make room for somebody else to come in. So unfortunately, despite the good service he's done, he has to go. Right now, then, I had 3 players. Did I want to lose any of them really? No, I'll be honest. Even one of them that I thought didn't act to the best of his ability when he'd had an injury, and he's come back from an injury. And this was a player that said to me that when he signed a contract, and I said to him, "Listen, you need to be challenged for your place." And he said, "I'm up for a challenge. I haven't got a problem about being challenged. I'm up for a challenge. I'll just make sure I keep my shirt." Well, that's great attitude to have, that you hope that you keep your shirt, but it's like turning around and saying, "I'll do well for you as long as I stay on this earth," but you can't tell somebody when they're going to drop dead.
Yeah.
Right. So my point, what I'm trying to make is this: is quite simple, right? He couldn't tell when he was going to have an injury, and he had an injury. And he come back from his injury, but then had a breakdown where he collapsed. And when he collapsed, you know, he had to have tests. But then when he come back from that, he couldn't get his place back because obviously we had somebody else in his place, and he couldn't get his place back. Now that happens through in any level of football. So the simple fact is, he was told to play for the under-23s. And turn up for the under-23s to get game time and be able to obviously push himself.
Try and stake a claim for a shirt.
Try and stake a claim, exactly. But he always used to make an excuse when it was the under-23s and dropped out. Now, I could have really been a right bar steward and held him to task because his contract would have allowed me to do. But I couldn't be arsed with it. I just couldn't be arsed with it bunching paperwork and the writing and things I had to do.
Trying to plead with him to play.
And so I didn't bother. I just let him. I just thought, I've given him enough rope. He's going to hang himself. So when it comes to the end of the season, and I could have taken him on because we had an option for him, right? I've decided that I'm not taking the option up. So he got a letter. We're not taking the option up. And he was probably glad about that because now he's in a position to make a clean break and go and try and play for somebody else, and we
wish him well. Yeah.
We wish him all the best. Then that came to the next 2, both lads that have given the club excellent service.
Yeah.
One in particular, I feel a bit sorry for because we had really good things for him, but he seems to have, for one reason or another. Other players, let me say this, have kind of gone more advanced of him. And the other player is a player that's given us good service, but for the last 2 years, through no fault of his own, through personal situations and probably sickness. But in the last 2 seasons, unfortunately, hasn't been able to commit through no fault of his own, through health and like I said, personal circumstances, like he probably have liked to have committed and play. And the issue is when this happens, because the contract players, you've still got to, it might not be a lot, but they're still picking a little bit of money up. So it's still costing us.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like insuring Brent Peters on a car and he doesn't have any convictions, but then I'll insure Steve Brown and he's getting convictions every other week. So when it comes to like at end of year, when you've got to review the situation, am I going to carry on paying Steve Brown and paying him out when he's a liability? And I don't mean that in a wrong way. I'm just trying I'm trying to put something over. So the simple fact were, I had to make the ruthless decision of saying to both these players in a letter, because that's what the FA tell you to do, that they wouldn't be retained.
But you still wanted them.
But I didn't. Well, that's up to them. I put on, in brackets, retained. As per FA regulations, I have to do what I'm doing. And unfortunately, we will not be in a situation to make you an offer of re-engagement. In brackets, contract.
Yeah.
However, it said, if you so wish to come back and register as a non-contract player, you are more than welcome to do so and fight for a place like everybody else. Don't guarantee anything. It just means they're in the same boat as the other non-contract players.
Yeah.
So my point, what I'm trying to make here, there was none of them, these next two, was not shown the door from Bacup Borough Football Club. They weren't going to be made an offer of re-engagement,
but they were invited to stay.
But if they wanted to stay, they could stay. But it also said on, if you need to discuss any aspect of this letter, feel free to contact me personally. Telephone number was included, right? And we will discuss this further. Now, anybody who's a man, if he feels like he's been hard done by, you would have thought that he would pick a phone up, ring up and say, is there any chance I can book an appointment to see you because I'd like to talk about my contract or my return, the retain list and where I fit going forward. That's what I would have thought would have happened, right? If they didn't want to stay and they thought, well, sorry, it doesn't matter, I'll go to pastures new, then fine. That is their prerogative. What I don't like and what I'm not happy about is when somebody turns round and says, I've been released. I've not been given an offer of re-engagement, and I was told through email, right? That is partly incorrect. You've been told by email because everybody else, that's an FA ruling, right? You do it by email. It gave him the opportunity to contact if he wasn't happy with anything. So it gave him that opportunity, right? So what he's going around saying is incorrect.
Yeah.
Because, yes, he didn't get an offer of re-engagement contract, but that didn't say that he couldn't come back and do pre-season, try to fight for a place as a non-contract player. And so I just wanted to put that record straight.
No, good. Good talking points this evening, Brent. Let's move on to another one that I mentioned in our pre-match social media post, and that was this man, the new man in charge at England, Thomas Tuchel. Don't know what your thoughts. Well, I kind of know what your thoughts were when he was appointed, but he's not had the best of starts, Brent. Has he? What's your opinion? Has it changed, or is it still the same?
No, my opinion is still the same. Right, let me get one thing straight. Thomas Tuchel is probably a very, very good manager. Right, I'm not saying anything about, and it's easy for again, I can't be contradicting myself because I keep saying this, that it's not usually. I don't agree with all this sack race. I'm a firm believer that if you invest in a club and you have a way of playing, you identify the people that you want to work with in your establishment, and you go out and target them people, and you work with them and give them every backing that you can give them, so that they can try to deliver the results that you want.
Yeah.
If it's not working, I don't think the sack race is the option. I think you get round the table and you've tried to work out why is it going wrong? What's happened? And there could be a million.
Certainly not after 4 games.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is here with the England setup, with everything. I kind of think that the FA and the people at high up that's within the England setup are kind of hypocrites.
Yeah.
And why I'm saying this is because, let's be honest, it's not just you, me, and the regular people out there who just think it's the England team and what he picks. There's a lot of hard work over the last probably 5-6 years, and this happens every year, behind the scenes in terms of development. That's one thing we've been talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
In terms of development of young players that's at top clubs like Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, wherever, and top English players that have been at them clubs have gone into St. George's Park and been developed further with a view to stepping up in rank in the England setup.
Yeah.
To eventually, injury-free, make the debuts in the England team, full England team. It's the same process as what I talked about.
The pathway, yeah.
Everything. It's the same process. Nothing changes. It's the same process. The only difference is within the FA setup, and they do this all the time, they change their ethos of how teams should play and teams should set up. So at one time, when Holland were winning the World Cup, it was decided, they've got it right then, so we'll start to play with three.
The
back.
total football era.
You get me. So they change it instead of sticking to what England won the World Cup, sticking to the philosophy, and you've got to understand, which I do because I've been brought up through that era, right? Is we talked about this as well. We could argue here on this show that was Nobby Stiles, God rest his soul, a world-class player? No, he was not a world-class player. You could argue, was Bobby Moore a world-class, God rest his soul, a world-class player? Well, maybe he were inching on. He was more of a finesse player. So, yes, he might be a world-class player, culture player. But was it important to have Nobby Stiles in that team?
100%.
Yes, it was, because he did the destroying for the culture players to do the damage. So in this situation, why have England not carried on? Because that we found him. It's no wonder that we've now gone however many years of hurt. 66, we win the World Cup, right? We've never been near. Well, we have been near, but not near enough.
But we've lost the identity of what England is all about as a football nation.
So what I'm trying to say is they spend thousands of pounds on developing coaches, or telling coaches that you need this badge, you need that badge, you need that, they need that, and you need that, which is a money-making machine.
Yeah.
Once you get into the system, whether it be a football league club, you then they have refresher days where you go in. They have inset days basically where you go into King George's place and refresh you and go through. So the coach is coaching the coaches. You follow me? Yeah. So they have all this situation. They do all that. Now they've done all that. So now, if you're an ambitious young coach, we'll take Ryan Russell and we'll take Alan Taylor from us, right? From us. Up and coming, good lads that take a big interest in the game, and they're trying to do everything right, and they do things right, and they're methodical in what they do, right? If they decided to spend money and go down the pathway because they've got ambition, and go down the pathway, so they spend several thousand, and then let me tell you, it's several thousands. You're talking, to get your pro license,
it's probably 20,000-30,000.
20,000, yeah. So it's a lot of money. But they invest and go because they have ambition and they just need a break and they need somebody to take them in, whether that somebody starts them at an academy level and then they work their way up. They've got it if they want to progress. And you know as well as I know what sometimes happens in football. You get your break because a manager gets sacked or moves on, right? And they appoint somebody within the club that then decides to appoint somebody that he's worked with in that club. But lower down
as an interim.
So he brings him in. So my point being, so all this, right, so you've invested, so Alan and Ryan now have invested lots of money. They're going into it, right? They're now in the system, but they're working their way up, but then all of a sudden, the kick in the bollocks is the England managerial appointment is vacant, which is Gareth Southgate's now stepping down, right? But what we're going to do, we're not going to go into our own system with people that have progressed and been part of our system, that understand our system, that understand the pathway, that understand these under 21s, understand the blinking under 15s, under 18s or whatever, understand that. We're not going to go into that situation. We're going to appoint a blinking German, or we're going to appoint an Italian, or we're going to... What? That, to me, is outrageous, just contradicting everything that they're doing.
Yeah. Against your own system.
Against your own system. So it's the biggest load of bloody trash I've seen and heard. And I just don't get it. So, so, and then what happens is when you see them watch them play over, and even when you're listening to interviews of Harry Kane and people like that, Harry Kane turns around, we weren't good enough. It's an attitude situation. We look tired, we look jaded. That's an excuse that I don't have it. Tired and jaded, especially on the money that they're on, right? But it's an attitude. They all say it's an attitude. Roy Keane in the studio, it's an attitude situation. So it's an attitude. So they look bored. But who's going to motivate them? Who's motivating them? Who's giving? But then that comes to the English mentality. They're Englishmen.
Yeah.
How can a German, and not being disrespectful here, or an Italian, give an Englishman the English mentality? There's nobody better than giving an Englishman English mentality than an Englishman.
Yeah, who's worked with the players probably since the age of 15, coming through the system.
Correct. So, all right, he might not have wanted the job, but if he did want the job, he should have got it. Lee Carsley.
Yeah,
because he's in the system. So
he had the one game, didn't he, Brent? And we spoke about it on the show where he tinkered too much with that team. Do you remember? And he got picked off.
He did, to be fair. Yeah, I get it. But
at least he was willing to have a go and try something.
Correct. But I kind of think they just contradict. Who's made that? So to me, whoever appointed. I mean, it's not like Thomas Tuchel. Let's be honest. He didn't really push up trees at Chelsea, did it? Really?
I never found him an interesting manager.
So I'm not being funny.
It's as boring as Gareth Southgate, but Gareth was I know you were a good supporter of Gareth and what he did.
Yeah, but let's talk about that then, because you just hit it on the head there. In a way, you've gone, he was as boring as Gareth Southgate. Now, come on, let's have it right. Would you sooner have? Listen, Gareth Southgate's job is about getting results for England,
And he got
and
results.
let's be honest, he got results for England.
He did.
Come on, let's have it right.
We can't question that, can we?
He got results for England. So, would you rather have a charismatic person sat in that hot seat that bounces about, laughs and jokes, makes fun, and you're laughing and thinks, belly half laughing, and he's a funny character, isn't he? But your bloody team's rock bottom.
Yeah.
And you want somebody that's dull and dire who comes across that's methodical and says this like Gareth might do or whatever, but his teams are winning.
Who gets us to semis and finals, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go for the latter.
You know what it is with the human race, and I said it before. We're sheep, and they're like sheep. So all these, Gareth Southgate. Gareth Southgate. He's dour, he's dull, and get him out. And I even hear it on. Listen, I didn't think it were a bad shot. I go through TikTok sometimes, and I see these guys on TikTok. I don't know what they're doing. They keep coming up and like they have loads of followers. I mean, there must only be kids. And he's going, and Gareth Southgate were linked to Man United, and he's going, "Oh, we're not having Gareth Southgate here." And I think, what, you want to shut your mouth?
Yeah, why not?
I'd have took Gareth Southgate at Man United, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. And I'll tell you what, he would attract players, good players, to Man United because he's respected by players.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely spot on there, Brent. I wanted to looking for comments because you talk about Man United. I know we're going to digress, but we often do. But I wanted to bring it up because everyone who gets involved with the show got Gary Hancock with us, and he would talk before when we were talking about contract players and releasing players and this, that, and other, and he made a good one, a bit like Man United with McTominay, clueless, releasing McTominay is, divulging, but he's got a good point there.
Well, he has. I mean, we were at Wembley. We talked about it last week, didn't we?
Yeah. Last week, what week before?
It's madness.
Releasing, the quality.
Yeah, it's madness.
Cheers, Garrett. But yeah, with the Tuchel situation, it's not been the best of starts, but they're going to have to stick with a man now, aren't they? Stick with him, and so hopefully it comes too. Well,
exactly. I mean, I'm not. Listen, time will tell, but I just don't think it's morally right to the foreigner is taking over, and he's only there to try and. It's just a kick in the. It's just a kick in the teeth to me, to all the Englishmen out there that spend their money, that are in the system, and want to progress, and they're not being allowed to progress because they think that Thomas Tuchel's the man, that can help us win the World Cup.
But we saw what the English coaches can do. We had him on about 3 years ago. Paul Simpson, absolutely fantastic. Won the World Cup, under-19s World Cup with England. So it just proves, I know it's a lesser level, but he's still taking part and winning the World Cup with the under-19. So it shows that we've got the talent in the coaching, in English coaching, but we're not utilising it.
No, that is the frustrating part. It's that is my opinion. It's just the
coaches having to leave and go to America and go.
I don't know.
Get work.
I don't know how Thomas Tuchel is going to motivate the players, the English players. I mean, after them, he's obviously not. I don't get it, because you listen to the interviews after that game of the English players, and you listen to the interview with Thomas Tuchel, and like you said, listen, I know they've got to be guided because of the press, and he can't be throwing people under a bus. I get that, but he don't need to throw people under a bus. You don't need to throw people under a bus. I just don't think he was the right man to take the England job or give him the England job. And I can't understand. I'm not blaming Thomas Tuchel. I'm blaming the England hierarchy, because they shouldn't. Why they give him the job? Not because it should be an Englishman. I'm sorry, but all right, we could turn around and say, well, Sven Goran Eriksson did all right. Yeah, well, he might have done, but I don't even think he should have been in charge of the England team. England team is England. You know, it's like turning around this. Listen, we don't want to get into politics, and I wouldn't even understand it. But there's fighting going on out. We're all over the bleeding place. There's bleeding fighting, and it's like turning around and sending a bloody Englishman with a Iraqi blinking uniform on and start fighting. What Iraqis fight together? You get what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
We're English, so Scotland, get a Scottish manager to manage your team. We're English, we'll have an English manager.
I kind of like going back to 1996 with Terry Venables and then Bobby Robson before him. Those are the two eras that I remember with pride.
100%, Steve, 100%. But why did Terry Venables get? Because he had a bit of baggage. So what?
Yeah.
I guarantee nearly every person on this blinking planet's got baggage if we look into the blinking light. All these do-gooders, if you look in, they'll have baggage.
Of course. And then I feel sorry
everybody's got baggage.
I even feel sorry for Big Sam because he never really got off the ground, did he? After what happened, he could have been an excellent England manager.
Well, he could have been, but it was a bit silly what he did, weren't it?
It was, and he probably one of his biggest regrets in football.
Yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? I mean, if Tommy Docherty got sacked at Man United, but for running off with Physio's wife?
As you do.
It's life, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Moving swiftly on. AGM is coming up soon. Are you having a trip to Blackpool, Brent?
Well, I don't. I'm really, really busy on a lot of fronts, and I don't usually do. But I feel like I must do on this one. Reason being, I think I owe it to. Listen, we've had our. I mean, I hope it's not. I hope Paul Lawler.
A lot of it's tongue in cheek, isn't it?
No, listen. I hope Paul Lawler stays on and doesn't. I mean, he's adamant that he's resigning at the end of this is his last term.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think that I need to be there, to support, because listen, if me and chairman of North West Counties. I mean, listen, in football, you can't always agree, and you don't always agree, and people all have a difference of opinions, and it's like that. And there's no two ways about it. Over time, since Paul's been the chairman, me and him in football matters have not always seen eye to eye. But that said, I have got to say this and go on record: Paul Lawler has been an absolute fantastic chairman.
I agree.
Even though we don't. I don't always agree with, he has been a fantastic chairman, and done really, really well for the North West Counties League. And John Deal as well. And I mean, God forbid, I dread it. I know Debbie's picking up the pieces. Debbie Jepson's doing, trying to, and John doesn't, he's struggling with his eyes and everything else. But what he doesn't know about the league and the football setups and isn't worth knowing. Yeah. At the end of the day, but he'll still be there in the background. But I just feel with what's going on that I need to be there, and also I also need to speak to him about a few things as well. Which so I think it's important that I'm in attendance.
And when is that, Brent? When are you heading over there? When is the AGM?
It's on Saturday. It's the day that we are back in. Pre-season. Yeah. But I don't do the training anyway. I've got trusted Nigel, Alan, Jimmy Petruzzi, and Alan, Nigel, Jimmy Petruzzi, and Ryan Russell will look after that. So that's not an issue. It's just the work I have to do at the football ground, because obviously we're all hands on the deck there. But it's only 2 hours of my time. Well, it's probably 4 hours, an hour up, an hour back, and 2 hours in the AGM. But I feel I should be there because I don't usually go. I usually send somebody else. But yeah.
And then we've got just to let people know, it's all on the social media pages. But at the moment, we've got 4 pre-season friendlies. The first one is kind of a Brent Peters 11. That's the Dawns Day, the charity event against Rosendale FC.
But let me just talk about that first, because listen, that's a charity kit and it's not an official match
it's not. It's an 11.
Because listen, our stadium through the clubhouse is not. We don't meet at this minute ground grading regulations.
Yeah.
There's no reason why a game of football can't be on Bacup Borough, because we can still use the changing rooms, and obviously we can still use the changing room and a game can go on, but it's not an official game as such, because we couldn't really host an official game on there because of obviously ground grading regulations, and because we fail them a little bit at the minute till the work's finished on the clubhouse. So I need that to get that point across, because when they see, well, they're hosting a game on Saturday. No, it's a charity event. We can't let that. And it's a game of football on the pitch. It is what it is.
And then we have the other games. We have a 3 away games, which is the Tuesday night, which is the 8th. That's New Mills. Then followed the Saturday with a trip to Bradford to play Route 1 Rovers on the 12th. And then the 15th is the final one at present, which is away to our friends at Chariton. So some decent pre-season friendlies there, Brett. I know you're not a big fan of pre-season friendlies. You want more running than that.
Well, I do. We want them fit. They've got, the one thing that players have got to do when they play my teams, they've got to be able to get round the pitch and be fit and last 90, not 90 minutes, but 90 blinking 100 and whatever minutes, you know what I mean? So the first thing is important, the massive thing is important, is building the fitness levels up. If you play your football and then there's a lot, listen, everybody to their own. If they want to have loads of pre-season friendlies and they're playing games, listen, players can hide in games. That's not building the fitness up. People can hide. Yeah. They can't hide when you're doing blinking laps around Hollingworth Lake and timed. Somebody reminded me. They said, I remember I went training once up at, you were taking it. He said, we had to do runs around Hollingworth Lake. He said, he said we did one lap and then we were all timed in. He said, and we had to beat. Yeah, we went round again and we had to beat our first time.
And I bet they never saw a ball for the first 2 weeks or 3 or 4 weeks. I bet they had no ball. No,
probably the first few sessions they didn't get a ball. But times have changed now. Listen, times have changed. Times have changed on a lot of things. But it is what it is. But but they need to be fit. And players have got to take their own responsibility, because they shouldn't have to wait and be beholden to us and my coaches. If we're not, if it's a day or a night when we're not, there's no sessions, why are they not doing their own? Take their own responsibility.
Yeah. And as we know, a lot of players do, they are professional and they do like to go and do the sessions themselves. So they should be coming back with a good level of fitness, you would expect.
I would. Most of them probably will do, with me knowing the mentality, but there's an odd couple. Well, I'll reserve it.
Yeah. Anything more to add? A great show. First one for a while on LinkedIn this afternoon. A lot of people tuning in, which is great. But anything to add, Brent?
No, that's it. Great show. Good talking point.
Next week we will be back. Yeah, speak to you soon. Just to let people know, next week we'll be back at our usual 9 a.m. Sunday morning. So if you're tuning in for the first time this afternoon or the early evening, and you're just catching us for the first time, do tune in. You can watch us live at 9 a.m. next Sunday morning, or you can catch us on our website or our YouTube channel, which is Bacup Borough Media. Enjoy your evening. I'll chat to you in the week, Brent.
I'll be asleep in 10 minutes. See you later.
Get your tea first. See you later.